Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And I will be speaking in English. So because we have some participants from other countries, perhaps. So if I shift to Tagalog little by little, just remind me. uh, so this after or tonight, I would be sharing with you some thoughts about the directory for Catechesis 2020 edition. Most of the things that I'll be telling you will be coming from here. So even if you haven't read the directory, you may gain some insights about it. But I would highly suggest that first you get a copy of it and then you read it. For the next 3 sessions, we will be focusing on the 3 parts of the directory. I don't know if you have copies already, but it would be good to order. I'm not part of the of the publisher, no? So just order from, I think, from the Pauline sisters. They have a copy of this. So let's start with an activity. Let's start with asking ourselves, or we ask ourselves, when you hear the word evangelization or catechesis, what comes to your mind right away? No? What comes to your mind right away? So we will be giving you a Mentimeter, and we will try to give our answer through this. I'm not very good at this also, but you can click the link that is shown in our chat box. You can click the link and then you give your answer there. Our question is, when you hear the word evangelization, what comes to your mind first? No, when you hear the word evangelization, what enters your mind right away? So can you go to the link of Mentimeter and you put your answer there? All right. So right away we have some answers. Mm-hmm. To keep it coming, keep it coming. And you may wish to enter that link that we have given you for the Mentimeter. All right, so we have 21. If you are not able to enter the link, don't worry. This is not a thesis defense that you will pass or fail. This is just our opening activity for our input this tonight. So we have 28 participants already. For some of you who are like me, who don't even know how to use this, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. Because I myself, I'm not very much into this. But our tech guy, Kuya Juni, and of course Ate Beng, they're helping us with this. So, all right. So we have 36 participants. So maybe up to 40. I'll wait until 40, and then we will close it and read what we have. No? Read the result of our Mentimeter. All right. So we are 38 already. So two more in order for us to, okay, 39 and 40. Okay, let's stop there. Let's see. Oh, may 41 pa. Sige, okay, let's just keep it coming. But what I see now, the three most prominent answers would be preaching the good news, proclamation, witnessing. Right. So good news, basically, preaching and proclamation, or proclaiming the good news, preaching the good news. These are the three most prominent responses. All right. And of course, there are some runners up, like witnessing, teaching, catechism. What else do you have? Now I can't read the other ones. Yeah, God's word, accompaniment, storytelling, mission. Yeah. But the three most prominent are good news, proclamation, and preaching, followed by witnessing. All right. So I think we are on the same page. When we talk about evangelization, it's basically about proclamation of the good news. It's about proclamation and preaching. But of course, we know that evangelization is much, much wider or deeper than that when it comes to our actual practice of evangelization. So tonight, let me give you some inputs about the first part of the directory. So we'll be focusing on the first part. Now, I'll not cover everything. I'll just give you some key points, some salient points about the directory. So we call our input tonight the catechesis in the dynamic of new evangelization. So it would be good to understand the relationship between catechesis and evangelization, and also the role of the catechist in the context of evangelization. All right, so let me present to you some slides that can guide us in our reflection. I'll be giving you an input for around 20 to 30 minutes. And then after that, we will proceed to some sharing. And later on, we will try to process our sharing. And hopefully, all of us would, after the session one, after the first session, we will have a better understanding of catechesis in the context of new evangelization. So as you have mentioned, as you have said, evangelization is really the enterprise, the endeavor, the project of the church when it comes to preaching the gospel. Saint Paul VI, no, in Evangelization Evangelization said something about it already. The reason why the church exists is to evangelize. No? Evangelization is the very reason why we exist as a church. However, it gets complicated because, so what about catechesis? What is the role, or what is the what do you how do we place catechesis in the project of evangelization? Let me just give a little background. We are already on the third edition of the directory. If you are a catechist right now or religious educator, you know very well that we are already on the third edition. So in 1971, there was a general catechetical directory. In 1997, there was a general directory for catechesis. And just last year, 2020, they published the directory for catechesis. And all these directories were published, were given to us because they followed some church events. Example, for the General Catechetical Directory of 1971, it followed the Second Vatican Council. No? And the 1997 directory followed the publication of the CCC. The 2020 directory followed the Synod on the New Evangelization, 2012, and of course, the landmark document of Pope Francis, Evangelii Gaudium. So we are given directories because there was an event in the church that happened. And in the Philippines, in the Philippine context, we have the National Catechetical Directory, which I believe they are now thinking about revising also due to the publication of this 2020 directory for catechesis. But of course, it's not our role very much, because it is the role of the CBCP ECCHE. No, it is their duty to, because the one of the recommendations of the directory for catechesis is to come up with a local, of a national catechetical directory, putting into context the directory for catechesis. Now, why the need for a directory for catechesis this 2020? Archbishop Fisichella, in his introduction, already laid down the very basic reason for coming out with a new catechesis. He said, it is because of the new cultural context, and basically the digital context, the digital culture, and the globalization of culture that led to a radical change in the lives of people today. No? The information superhighway, cyberspace, internet, it has changed. It is a game changer, as they say. If you're familiar with Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, he is calling our age today as the age of the fourth industrial revolution. If you are familiar with the industrial revolutions, the first industrial revolution happened with the invention of the steam engine. Because of that, transport was facilitated, from cars to airplanes. The second industrial revolution happened with the invention of electricity. So everything became electric. And then the third industrial revolution happened with the invention of the computer. And of course, everything became automated. A few years later, uh, the gap between the first three industrial revolutions were around hundreds of years. No? But the gap between the third and the fourth industrial revolution happened in a matter of years. So the computer was invented sometime 1970s and flourished around 1990s. And the fourth industrial revolution was ushered in by the Internet of Things, as they say, because of the digitalization of everything, the Internet of Things. So because of this new reality, new cultural context of digital culture, as well as the globalization of culture because of the Internet, now we have new realities. And therefore, we need to find new models, new models for formation. Now, as Archbishop Fisichella would say, we need a formation that pays attention to the individual and not a one-size-fits-all model or an international standardization of formation in the life of faith. Why? Archbishop Fisichella is saying, nowadays, everything can be made anonymous. No? Everything can be hidden. Even if we are deeply connected in the internet, and yet people are somehow isolated. So there's the feeling of you are connected with everybody through social media or the internet, but there is also that longing to be recognized. And therefore, the General Directory for Catechesis is recommending a new model, a new style of formation or even catechesis. Not a standardized version, but a more, let's say, individual-oriented formation. I think for those of you in the schools, in the universities, and holding classes, especially nowadays, it's very easy for students to be lost in the crowd or in the statistics. So, and people are somehow, they feel abandoned because we can be everywhere, but not anywhere at all. Now we can have many friends in social media, but we don't have any friend at all. So especially in the case of our young people today, they long to be recognized. They long to belong. They want to be recognized. They want to belong to someone, to a group, to a community. So the recommendation of the directory is find a new model that can make our catechesis and evangelization more individual-oriented or person-oriented. As the directory would say, faith is transmitted through interpersonal connection, and it is nourished within the circle of the community. I think this is the realization of those who crafted the directory. Although the transmission of faith happens in the context of the classroom or the modules or the lesson plans and whatnot, after the 2012 Synod on New Evangelization, they have realized, and even in Evangelii Gaudium of Pope Francis, we have realized that faith is better and most effectively transmitted through relationship, interpersonal connection, and within the circle of a community, not within the classroom, not within the module, not within the academic setting. It is transmitted most effectively in the context of relationship. And therefore, because of that realization, there is now a close connection between evangelization and catechesis. So this close connection between evangelization and catechesis is the distinctive feature of the 2020 Directory for Catechesis. Why? Let me explain why. Pope Francis says, I don't just have a mission. No, I am a mission. St. Paul VI says, the church exists to evangelize. So they're using the word evangelization and mission. Our mission is primarily to evangelize. not to catechize. Now, I don't say that to disparage catechesis or to belittle catechesis, not at all. But from St. Paul VI to Pope Francis, they use the word evangelization and mission. A mission to evangelize. Why? Because the transmission of the faith happens better or best in the context of a relationship, a person-to-person connection, in the context of a community, and therefore, proclamation of the faith or preaching the gospel happens. It happens most strongly and most effectively when it is done, when the announcement happens in the context of a relationship. So there should be an intimate union between the announcement of the Kerygma and its maturation. And for so long, we have neglected the Kerygma, the initial proclamation. We have jumped right away into an assumption that people are already mature in faith, they are ready to be catechized, but they have not even heard yet the proclamation of the good news to them of Jesus Christ. So the directory proposes that there is an inseparable connection between evangelization and catechesis in the light of the culture of encounter. So in simple terms, we cannot talk about catechesis in the air, or catechesis inside the classroom alone, or catechesis inside the module alone. Catechesis, if at all it should happen, it must happen in the bigger context of the evangelization enterprise. And basically, evangelization, the core of it is the culture of encounter, person-to-person relationship, community, belongingness. And therefore, some changes have to be done. Some changes have to be made in the way we approach things. And the basis for the 2020 directory, as mentioned by Archbishop Fisichella, of course, he wrote the new directory because he is I think, the president of the Pontifical Council for the Promotion of New Evangelization. He says that you can find the basis of the directory in Evangelii Gaudium 164, 165. And Pope Francis says in that, in Evangelii Gaudium, we have rediscovered the fundamental role of the first announcement or Kerygma, which needs to be the center of all evangelizing activity in all efforts at church renewal. The operative word now is Kerygma. What is Kerygma? Kerygma is the first proclamation of the faith. And we have discovered that this proclamation is called first, not because it exists at the beginning and then can be forgotten or replaced by other more important things. Kerygma is first in a qualitative sense because it is the principal proclamation, the one which we must hear again and again in different ways, the one which we must announce one way or another throughout the process of catechesis at every level and moment. So Kerygma is the first proclamation. In other words, it is the first moment that one gets to hear about Jesus Christ. The name Jesus, the person of Jesus, the first experience of who the Lord is in a person's life. So it is first, not in the quantitative sense, in terms of number, but in terms of the qualitative sense of the first experience of the faith. We must not think that in catechesis, the Kerygma gives way to a supposedly more solid formation. This is Pope Francis writing in Evangelii Gaudium. Nothing is more solid, profound, secure, meaningful, and wisdom-filled than initial proclamation. We have to think about this very seriously, my dear friends. And in fact, the whole point of my input tonight is to make you understand the necessity, the importance of Kerygma. And Kerygma is what we refer to as the first moment of evangelization. And sometimes we think it is just a moment in the whole enterprise or project, but actually, as Pope Francis would say, it is not. The Kerygma does not give way to a more solid, and when we say solid, we refer to catechesis. So you have to catechize this person because he needs to mature in faith. And that's how we understand catechesis, of course. It's maturing in faith. But Pope Francis is saying something very important. But there's nothing more solid and profound and secure and wisdom-filled than the initial proclamation. All Christian formation consists of entering more deeply into the Kerygma. Again, the Kerygma is the initial moment that the person encounters the Lord, person to person, subject to subject, which is reflected in and constantly illumines the work of catechesis, no? Thereby enabling us to understand more fully the significance of every subject which the latter treats. So, my dear friends, it is the message capable of responding to the desire for the infinite which abides in every human heart. This Kerygma, this initial proclamation, is the foundation of all catechesis, of the whole evangelization project. It is the message that is at the foundation and the core of it all. Not doctrine, not ethical guidelines or moral life, not even worship yet. It is the message of the Kerygma that somehow touches deeply the person. And from CV 130, Christus Vivit 130, Pope Francis says, this is the core of the Kerygma. When you proclaim to another that God loves you, that Christ is your Savior, that He is alive. And of course, this Kerygma is formed or formulated in many other ways. But for Pope Francis, it can be summarized into this. God loves you. Christ has saved you. He is alive. Every person, every Christian, every Catholic must hear these words. And not just hear these words. They must believe deeply in their heart that these words are true. They must experience this strongly. They must experience this personally. They must experience this and remember this in their life. That God loves you. That you are loved more than anyone else, or you are loved more than you'll ever know. That Christ has saved you in spite of your sinfulness. And that Christ is alive, and He does not want to go far from you or do not want to separate from you. So this is the core of the Kerygma. And this is a proclamation that everybody needs to hear, understand, and accept. Proclaiming the gospel is witnessing to an encounter that keeps the focus on Jesus Christ, the Son of God incarnate in the history of humanity, in order to bring to fulfillment the revelation of the Father's saving love. That's another way of putting the Kerygma. Proclaiming the gospel is witnessing to an encounter that keeps the focus on Jesus Christ, the Son of God, incarnate in the history of humanity, in order to bring to fulfillment the revelation of the Father's saving love. In simple terms, God loves you. The primacy of the Kerygma or a kerygmatic catechesis does not mean that mystagogical catechesis, which is the post-baptismal catechesis, or the witness of charity is secondary, or even our formal catechesis in the classroom or in other contexts. It doesn't mean that they are secondary, not at all. The primacy of the Kerygma or a kerygmatic catechesis only means that on the basis of the heart of the faith, the lex credendi, as Pope Francis would say, the lex credendi gives itself over to the lex orandi. And together they turn the believer's way of life into a witness of love that makes the proclamation credible. So it is not, again, it is not a belittling or denigration of what we do in the classroom in terms of formal catechesis or instruction, or even the witness of life. It only means that um, at the heart of our life as Christians, there must be that experience of Jesus as your Lord, as your Savior, as your God. The 2020 Directory undertakes the catechetical journey under the primacy of evangelization. And somehow we get the idea that when they use the word evangelization, it refers to the whole project, to the whole process of proclamation, but it refers specifically to the foundation of the Kerygma. And the Kerygma, or the initial proclamation, is the first encounter, experience of a person with the Lord. So the goal of catechesis then is the living encounter with the Lord who transforms life. Catechesis always takes place in the light of this encounter and must never veer away from it. It must always be present, no matter what stage the person is already in his or her catechetical journey. It should always go back to that living encounter with the Lord. And by the way, Pope Benedict XVI has already said something like this way back in 2005. In Deus Caritas S number 1, he says, being Christian is not the result of an ethical choice or a lofty idea, but the encounter with an event, a person, which gives life a new horizon in a decisive direction. It's beautiful if you understand that. He says that you cannot really be a Christian because you have believed in a doctrine, in a lofty idea or dogma, or have even been inspired by the witness of people around you, or by the ethical choices that you have made, your moral life. Pope Benedict said, being Christian is the result of an encounter, an event in your life, encounter with Jesus, a person which has given your life a new horizon in a decisive direction. If we may put this in the example of the saints, this is the experience of Saint Ignatius of the cannonball experience of Ignatius. For Saint Paul, this is the road to Damascus experience. For Peter and the other disciples, this was the experience of Jesus calling them. They were in their boats, washing their nets, and Jesus coming to them and telling them, follow me. In intentional discipleship by Sherry Weddell, it is a book. There's a book called Intentional Discipleship. She calls this the drop the net experience, dropping the net. The moment Jesus comes to your boat and he tells you, follow me, and you drop your net and you follow him. That is Kerygma. The moment Jesus comes to your boat, the moment, like Nathanael, you approach Jesus and Jesus telling you, I have seen you by the fig tree even before Philip called you. So this is the moment when the Samaritan woman by the well encountered the love of Jesus. This is the moment of so many people in the Gospels, so countless of people in the Gospels that meeting the Lord, having been touched by the Lord, and transformed by that experience. It gives your life a new horizon. And horizon means you're looking at a new vista. A new horizon means a new perspective in life, in a decisive direction where you are going. This is Kerygma in its purest sense. When you encounter the Lord and that experience has changed you. I think for all of you who are here, we have had that experience before. That's the very reason why you became a catechist. That's the very reason why you have become a religious, and that's the reason why I have become a priest. That experience of the Lord so transformed me that I could not help it. I could not be like the young man who said to Jesus, I have performed all these commandments. What do I need? What still do I lack? And when Jesus told him, go sell your possessions, he could not, because he had plenty of them. And Jesus looked at him with love, but also Jesus looked at him with sadness, because he was offering something so great to him, but he could not let go of what he had. And time and again, we see this in many Catholics today. Jesus inviting them to a living relationship, and yet they refuse because they are busy with their studies, they are busy with their rituals and devotions and whatnot. And it is the Lord already coming to him, getting into his boat, in the boat of his life, and they still don't recognize him. So the different formulations of the Kerygma, which necessarily open pathways of discovery, correspond to the existential doorways into the mystery. So Pope Francis says in Evangelii Gaudium, the Kerygma is the doorway. When it is opened for a person, catechesis is no longer a problem. When Kerygma happens, when the initial proclamation is received by the person, then catechesis will just be a breeze for us. If not, if the door remains closed, if the person has not encountered the Lord and formed a living relationship with him, if the door remains closed, no matter what we do, nothing will prosper. And if it prospers at all, it could be going the wrong direction. One image we can use is the image of a beautiful car, a beautiful, nice car. Now, I heard one speaker use this image. He was saying, the Catholic Church, the teachings of the Church is very much like a beautiful car. Let's say a Mercedes-Benz or a Ferrari, if you wish. It's a beautiful, nice car. It has everything on it. All the features, beautifully packaged. All the technological advances put in the car. So the Catholic Church, the speaker says, is something like that. All the features are there. All the things necessary for you to have a good ride, good journey, and to arrive at your destination safely. But he says, but if the car is not ignited, if there's no key that starts it, so if there's no ignition key that fires it up, the car would be wasted in the garage. And that's basically the relationship between catechesis and evangelization. Many times, all the ingredients are there, but they are wasted because the car has not been ignited yet. How can it move? And how can you enjoy the ride when it is not ignited and started? Because there was no ignition. There was no fire that started it all. And that's basically Kerygma, the living encounter with Jesus. If that does not happen, if all things happen after, then maybe it could be going the wrong direction. So, what is the relationship between catechesis and evangelization? Let me give you some points. I'm not saying this because I am director of the new evangelization. I'm saying this because the directory said so. So there must be a connection between catechesis and evangelization. And how are they connected? The directory says in the mystagogical catechesis, for example. What is the mystagogical catechesis? It introduces the believer into the living experience of the Christian community, the true setting of the faith. It is progressive and dynamic. It is rich in signs and expressions and beneficial for the integration of every dimension of the person. And catechesis, this mystagogical catechesis, is inspired by the catechumenal model. So mystagogical catechesis is the catechesis that happens in the context of a community, somebody journeying with you, and you're going through this progressively. No? And if you go to the catechumenal process, I don't know if you're familiar with the neo-catechumenal way. If you're involved in it, you understand this very well. In the US and other parts of the world, they have the rite of Christian initiation for adults, and they're following the catechumenal model. Here in the Philippines, we have barely parish that does this. No? The catechumenal process involves catechesis, sacraments, witness of charity, fraternal experience. They have different rites of passage. Example, the pre-catechumenate, where the Kerygma happens, the first evangelization. And then the catechumenate proper, the rite of admission, the rite of handing on the gospel. And then there is the rite of purification and illumination. They have the rite of election or inscribing of names, handing on the creed, handing on the Lord's Prayer. So these are all part of the process, which ends in the sacrament of initiation at the Easter Vigil. So leading to the time of mystagogy. So there are different rites of passage in the catechumenal way. And I don't know if there are parishes in the country who are doing this process. So this is going back to the time of the early church, in the time of the catechumens, those who are being prepared for baptism. They go through different rites of passage. And beautiful, because they have different rituals. First, in the pre-catechumenate, you have the first evangelization or the Kerygma. And then the rite of admission, the rite of handing on the gospel, the rite of inscribing the name of the elect, handing on the creed, handing on the Lord's Prayer, and then eventually ending with the sacrament of initiation during Easter Vigil. This is a long process, but after the process, you are very sure, you can be sure that the person who was initiated into the faith knows what he has accepted, believes what he has as he has learned, and lives now in connection or in relationship with Jesus in a more personal way. I think some parishes have tried this. I just don't know how it went. No, I don't know. In my parish, I haven't tried this, so I admit that I have not tried the catechumenal model. Although in my parish, I have a neo-catechumenal community, and they're so fascinating and they're so inspiring, because they always have the celebration of the Eucharist and celebration of the Word every week. They have some convivence and other gatherings, and their faith, I see in their members, a living faith. No, they are so committed to their faith, and that's because they have gone through a process of catechumenate. So that's one way where catechesis and evangelization would have a connection. So catechesis is always at the service of new evangelization. That's the whole point of the directory. Catechesis is not a be-all and all or an independent project or enterprise. It must be seen always in the context of the evangelization project. So catechesis should always be missionary, should always be going forth. It is always under the sign of mercy, and catechesis is a laboratory of dialogue. No? So in other words, catechesis at the service of new evangelization is always dynamic. It is always going forth. It is always looking for new paths, kasi that's what new evangelization is. New language, new structures, and new fervor. Catechesis in the context of evangelization is a laboratory of dialogue, meaning there's always the relationship that is established between the catechist and those being catechized. And in the directory, there is the call to reinterpret the nature and goals of catechesis. It says that catechesis must always be connected with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, a firm trust in the Holy Spirit. It must always be grounded on the living encounter with Jesus. It must be done in the context of accompaniment and community. We must form spirit-filled evangelizers. In other words, those who have new ardor in their faith. We must form authentic missionary disciples, meaning people who are deeply in love with Jesus and are always ready to proclaim that love to others. And therefore, there must be a need to overcome any opposition between content and method, between faith and life. In other words, we must not always concentrate on the I don't want to again, no, to belittle our efforts, but sometimes we concentrate too much on, so what's our methodology? What's our pedagogy? And what is our content? And sometimes we, our input in catechesis is too much focused on the things we want to say, on the things that must be heard, instead of what they must experience. And somehow, because we focus too much on content and methodology, we have lost the whole reason why we are doing it. And the very reason why we proclaim Jesus is so that the person may have a living relationship with Jesus, a loving encounter with him. So we must go beyond our fascination with, methodologies, no matter how important they are, contents. They are always important because that's how you go deeper and mature in the faith. But if it is not preceded by a kerygmatic proclamation or a living encounter with Jesus, those other inputs, so to speak, would be for nothing, would be wasted. Like a car, so beautiful, everything is there, but has not been ignited yet. Let us go back a little to some moments and aspects of evangelization so that we understand where catechesis can be found. So these are the moments and aspects of evangelization, as the directory would say. First is the missionary stage, the missionary activity. That means going forth. That means reaching to everyone, to all people, to all possible hearers of the word. And then you reach out. You go out of the sacristy. You go out of the classroom. You go out of your enclosure, so to speak. And then you witness to your faith. Now, sometimes, in countries that are not Christian, this is the only thing they can do, to witness to their faith, to live out their faith without having to proclaim. Now, after witnessing to your faith, after, showing them that you are a Christian, that you are a practicing Catholic, and this is what you do as a Catholic, and maybe if they ask questions, you explain to them a little. And then, after that, witnessing of faith, there's the first proclamation, the time where you can introduce slowly the person of Jesus Christ to them. That is if they are ready. Now, as Pope Francis would say, we don't evangelize by proselytation or proselytization. We don't proselytize. We evangelize by way of attraction. So, missiology by attraction, as they call it. So, the first proclamation is followed by the time of inquiry and maturation. The time of inquiry and maturation, where the person makes a deliberate choice. And then you will have the initiatory catechesis, the profession of faith, and then you place him in a community that can accompany him, fraternity, liturgy, charity, and then leading to pastoral action, which completes the missionary activity. So a missionary comes, first stage, witnessing to the faith, having this kerygma, initial proclamation, and then if there is the decision to follow and to learn more, then the time of inquiry and maturation, that's where catechesis happens. When the person makes the deliberate choice, I would like to learn more about this guy, Jesus, that you are telling me. Please explain to me who he is and what he has done. So this is somehow the essential moments and aspects of evangelization. Another way of putting it is there are 5 moments. 1, pre-evangelization, inactive or passive connection with the faith. 2, initial proclamation of the gospel or kerygma, telling the story of Jesus. 3rd, initiatory catechesis, introduction to the life of faith in the church. 4th, mystagogical or post-baptismal catechesis, an initiation into God's self-revelation. And then 5th, permanent or continuing catechesis, a systematic presentation of the truths of the faith. So what do we find in the 5 moments of evangelization? We find that the catechesis that we have been doing is actually just in the last stage of evangelization. In the 5th stage, you have the permanent or continuing catechesis, a systematic presentation of the truths of the faith. That's what we mean by catechesis. But if you lose the first 4 steps, that you have lost the opportunity. You have not taken the opportunity to evangelize, to proclaim the Kerygma, or even to do some initiatory catechesis, not yet fully exploring the contents of the faith, then we would be missing a lot. So just put things in context, that our catechesis should always be in the service of the bigger enterprise of evangelization. Another way of putting it is in terms of these 5 stages or 5 moments: pre-evangelization, evangelization, discipleship, and apostleship. We can say that pre-evangelization moment is opening, relationship, belongingness, invitation, prayer of some sort, and then witness of life. So you are not even talking about your faith as yet. You are just, in the establishing relationship. You're just opening the door. And then if the person somehow opens the door in order or shows interest, then you go to evangelization moment. And your target or your goal is conversion. So you do the Kerygma, and there is that encounter and personal relationship. Now, after the initial proclamation comes the hard decision. And this is the dropping the net moment. Will this person who has received the Kerygma go on? Will he or she continue? But he has to make the decision. The person has to make the decision. We cannot force it on him or her. If the person says, yes, I'm interested, I want some more, then we go to maturing in Christian faith. They call it discipleship. No, we do catechesis. We give him or her the creed, etc., the sacraments, equipping and renewing the person. And if the person is mature enough, then we will send him out to a mission. So that's action and apostleship, serving, going out, evangelization, and eventually even justice, social justice. So this is the whole spectrum, let's say, or moments of evangelization. Pre-evangelization, establishing relationship, and then Kerygma, and then decision moment, and then catechesis, and eventually mission. My theory is many of our so-called catechized have not even experienced the Kerygma. And we have catechized them, assuming that they are matured in the faith, and yet, lo and behold, they have not fully appreciated what you have given, because in the first place, their heart has not yet been opened by the love of Jesus. There is no living encounter relationship yet, and yet all these inputs that we are giving them, they're just flying. Pasok sa isang tenga, labas sa kabila. They're just there in your classroom, listening to you apparently, but actually the relationship has not yet been established. And so we get very, very few. If at all, we get people who mature and are ready to be sent for a mission. And I think mission is the gauge for catechesis and evangelization. If we are not producing missionaries, that means there is a gap, there is a terrible gap in the evangelization and catechetical projects. So hopefully we consider this. And somehow my idea is we oftentimes put the cart before the horse. Meaning, we put the sacraments, catechesis, theology before Kerygma or evangelization, for that matter. And the sad thing about it is we continue to do this again and again and again. We give a generic, a standardized version of our modules to all students. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. We have to do that also in the classroom, be it in the public or Catholic schools or in our parishes. We have to do it systematically, organically, etc. I have no quarrel with that, by the way, so do not get me wrong. They're all very important. What I'm saying is, and according to the directory, Before you are able to do that, systematic catechesis. Never forget the kerygmatic catechesis. If you jump right away into a systematic, ongoing catechesis that targets the maturation of the faith of the person, and you have neglected the opening, the igniting of kerygma, then you have placed the cart before the horse. Like in love and marriage. In love and marriage, you cannot put marriage first and then love. Love first, and then love will carry the marriage. So same thing with evangelization and kerygma. Without evangelization and kerygma, catechesis would not move forward. So don't put the cart before the horse. All right, let me go to the last part. The identity and vocation of the catechist. So having said that, yeah, that's true, Carmelo. Somehow, that's the debate going on right now in terms of, are we evangelized or are we just sacramentalized? But of course, I'll not go into the debate. But somehow I get the feeling that, yeah, we have been sacramentalized and have not been fully evangelized. So having said this, what's now the identity and vocation of the catechist? Again, according to the directory, let me wrap up with this topic. The identity and vocation of the catechist, therefore, is that you are a witness of faith and keeper of the memory of God. You're a witness of faith and keeper of the memory of God. In other words, your primary self-identification should be that my faith is alive. And I witness to it every day wherever I am. That inside the classroom or outside of it, I am a catechist. I am an evangelizer. I am a disciple maker. I am a disciple of Jesus. And a keeper of the memory of God. And it is not the keeper of the memory of the articulation of God in theology or our religious education classes. Keeper of the memory of God means that you are a keeper of a loving, living relationship with God. And that living encounter and relationship is what you proclaim wherever you are. What you have seen and heard, what you have felt, and what you have looked upon. That's what you proclaim every day, wherever you are. And somehow, when we enter the classroom, we take a different look. No, we become a teacher right away. When in fact, the directory says, yes, you are a teacher, but you are also a mystagogue. What is a mystagogue? A mystagogue is a keeper of the mystery of God in his or her life. That you are a sacrament of the presence of God. So you could be a teacher, but you are also a mystagogue, a keeper of the mystery of God in your life. You are an educator, yes, but you are an accompanier first. So you look at the way the directory identifies our vocation and even our basic self-identity as catechists. You are not a teacher and educator first. You're first a witness, and you keep the memory of God in your heart, in your life. And this ongoing relationship with God, this living and loving relationship is shown in your whole disposition. You're a package of values to everyone. So that you are, when you walk, you're a walking encounter with Christ. Now, I think for all of you catechists, you have experienced this. Someone shared with me this beautiful experience. This is the joy of being a catechist. One time, the children whom she's teaching, when she came, they were saying, the children were saying when she came to meet them, oh, here comes the Mother of God. and the catechist felt so affirmed and so happy about it. And she became the Blessed Mother. It's just that the children were saying, here comes the Mother of God. Maybe they have seen in her the beautiful face of the Blessed Mother or the beautiful face of the Mother of Jesus in her person. And I think that's one of the joys of being catechist. When somebody tells you, here comes the Mother of God. No? But of course, you're not the Blessed Virgin. But you could be the face, no? the face of the Mother of God, of God Himself. All right, so that's your identity and vocation. And lastly, the recent apostolic letter of Pope Francis, Antiquum Ministerium, he says, your identity should be men and women of deep faith and human maturity. And you are active participants in the life of the Christian community. You are capable of welcoming others. You are generous and you live a life of fraternal communion. Let me take this one by one. In Antiquum Ministerium, where the Ministry of Catechist is formalized by Pope Francis, his basic description of a catechist is that you're a person of deep faith and human maturity. You are an active participant in the life of the Christian community. You are capable of welcoming others. You are generous in living a life of fraternal communion. What it tells us is this: you don't have to be very, very intelligent and smart. It is not dumbing down the message of the gospel, of course, or the Christian faith. What I'm saying is, what Pope Francis is telling us, put more emphasis on relationship, on encounter, on the living witness of the faith, of welcoming people, of making them feel the love of God. You are a living sacrament of the love of God for others. And that's how we can fulfill our vocation and ministry as catechists. Christ is alive in us. We experience his saving action in our life, and we proclaim his love to all. Without that basic relationship that you proclaim, all the things that you explore in your lesson plans, in your subject matters, or in your discussions would be compromised. So in the end, my dear friends, catechesis and evangelization, they should always be connected. But the directory says there must be the primacy of evangelization. Catechesis is a moment in the whole evangelization project. And there must be the experience of the Kerygma, the ignition key, if catechesis is to prosper and to flourish. So hopefully this first session has given you some thoughts and insights on the relationship between evangelization and catechesis, as well as your role as a catechist. The whole point of this exercise that we are doing is to not just to understand the document, but really to understand the whole evangelization mission, the mission of evangelization, and where is catechesis in that project, or in that mission of evangelization. And basically, I think somebody says here, maybe I could take this yung question from Digna, just to wrap everything up. Is it okay to say that the goal of evangelization is the Kerygma, and catechesis facilitates this? Precisely, that's the whole point of this. That catechesis should not be contained in itself and separated from the whole process of evangelization mission. What do I mean by that? Sometimes kasi in our experience, we think that transmission of the faith happens just by teaching them inside the classroom, and that's it. If I am the catechist, I teach them in the classroom for the whole year, but I don't have any contact with them at all outside the classroom. I don't consider myself anymore as an accompanier for them. I don't consider myself anymore as a companion for them outside the classroom. That's one danger in separating catechesis from the whole project of evangelization. Catechesis should be connected with every phase and moment of evangelization, from pre-evangelization to ongoing formation. Second point is, many times we take catechesis from the context of community. Now, catechesis cannot be separated from the context of community building. There's always to be connected with the circle of community, as I have pointed out. So in other words, as a catechist, we are supposed to be networkers. That's why the image of the net. We are also networkers, meaning we collaborate with other ministries so that we can also participate, no? And we make catechesis alive in all aspects of our ministerial life or parish life. So that's the second point. The second point is, do not take catechesis away from the context of a community. And in fact, a catechist should be a community builder. Um, you are not separated from other ministries, no? So you are supposed to connect with them. And third point is, catechesis should always be in the service of mission. Meaning, if we don't form a missionary disciple of our students, then we may just have taught them about the faith, but we did not make them disciples of Jesus. I think the whole point of the new directory is we must understand catechesis in the context of missionary discipleship, discipleship making, or discipleship building. And what is discipleship? Discipleship is when you teach, your primary goal is this person falls in love with Jesus. As Pope Francis would say, no, evangelization is making them fall in love with Jesus. It's not just making them fall in line. Sometimes kasi as catechist, mas stricto pa tayo kaysa sa science teacher eh. In the sense na they don't feel the love in us of Christ. We see in us somebody who teaches them and expects the right answers in our exams later. This is, I think, the pitfall of many religious educators and even students or teachers of theology. Parang we teach theology, kasi experience this in many universities I have been to, parang I see the way they operate when it comes to religious ed. Parang, come on, guys, this is not about, making them, example, I have a nephew who experienced it, no? He failed, imagine, in his religious ed education class because the theology teacher said that if you still believe in God after this course, I will fail you already. Imagine that, no? Imagine a theology teacher telling you that if you don't question God after this course, you cannot pass this course. No? And mind you, there are teachers like that of religion, no? Now, too much philosophy, too much theology, and these students graduate from the university and they have no faith at all, because the experience of faith they had in the university or in the school was a faith that was lifeless, a faith that was loveless. The point, I think, of the new directory is to put some love in catechesis. Don't make it as a professional career. And that's what I think Archbishop Fisichella said, no, in the introduction. He was saying, we must explore a way, or we must find a way to make a catechesis a more person-to-person oriented endeavor or method. Not one size fits all, not international standardization of faith, no, but more of an encounter, a living encounter through you as the instrument, as the catechist, and leading them to Jesus, to make them fall in love with Jesus. So finally, my dear friends, because we have another session next week, if you're still here, if you come back, no, we will explore the second part of the directory, which is the processes, no. But suffice it to say in this first session that catechesis must never be separated from the Kerygma, the initial proclamation. It is not mature, as the directory would say, the Kerygma, the initial proclamation, the reliving encounter with Jesus, must be the foundation of everything. And that should lead to conversion. That should lead to discipleship. That should make your student decide on whether they will follow the Lord or they will go away from the Lord. Our module should always lead to that, no? The decision moment when that student will say, I love the Lord, I will follow the Lord. Because at the end of your course, and you did not ask that, we will just move to another level. Let's say, oh, tapos na tayo sa sacrament, we go naman to the church, we go to... So we are just moving from one topic to another, but we never led them to uh, uh, an honest to goodness relationship with the Lord based on their decision. Remember, faith is a choice also. Yes, it's a gift, but it's also a choice that you make to follow the Lord. No, you drop the net and follow the Lord, or you go your own life and just forget about Him. So don't neglect the kerygma in the catechetical endeavor. Second is, as I've said, not without the context of community. Kaya nga may catechumenal model, no, ang new directory. Kasi ang catechumenal model, you are transmitting the faith in the context of the community. A community accompanies the candidate, the elect, and then until baptism. After baptism, he has still a community that sustains his faith or monitors, accompanies him in the faith. And third, missionary discipleship. If all our efforts are only towards exam taking and passing the course, forget about it. No, I don't think it's the whole purpose of evangelization or even catechesis or even religious education. If the whole purpose of our courses in theology, religious ed, CLE or whatnot is to make them pass the exam, if that's what we have in mind, then forget about it because you're doing it all wrong. Our main goal at the end of it all is to make them missionary disciples. In other words, you have equipped them because of your teaching, and now they are ready to be sent. In fact, for me, the best, I would say the best sign that we have succeeded in our catechetical enterprise in evangelization is that our student has become a catechist himself or herself. A catechist of his peers, a catechist among his friends, etc. If we did not see that, if we do not see that in them, then we must be doing it wrong. Because the whole purpose of evangelization and catechesis is to make them disciples, and disciples who are ready to be sent eventually. That's why Pope Francis emphasizes missionary discipleship. So we are not just the bearers of the good news. We transmit the good news so that those who have received the good news will become disciple makers themselves eventually. They will carry the good news and will be ready now at the end of our course with them. They will be ready now to share their faith. I think that's the final exam. In every religious ed course, the final exam should be, have you talked to someone about your faith already? Have you been able to share your faith with anyone? For me, if I were a teacher of religious ed, that's my only question towards the end of the class. Have you talked to someone about Jesus lately? If the student says, I have not even gone to Mass for the past how many months? So what's the whole purpose of what we have done? So that's for me the summary of the first part, no? The first part of the identity, vocation, the relationship between evangelization and catechesis, etc. The summary of it all is, have we made disciples after we have evangelized and catechized? Because if not, then maybe we have just taught something, but really, what was the fruit of it all? What was the fruit? Where was it going? So missionary discipleship is our main goal. Again, that's not from me. That's from the Evangelii Gaudium, the basis of the directory for 2020. So thank you very much for your participation in our first session. I hope to see you for the next session. We'll proceed to the second part of the directory.